Iron rusts from disuse. Water loses its purity from stagnation. Even so does inaction sap the mind of its vigor. Leonardo da Vinci. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Commoners Honing All Disciplines podcast. We're excited to be back. This week, we're going to talk about ruts, specifically stagnation. Anytime you may feel yourself stuck in a particular habit or routine, how do you get out of that? How do you realize, first of all, you're in it? How do you take advantage of it? Why does it happen? We're going to talk about all these things and hopefully you'll learn something. So, to begin, we should answer, what is a rut? What do we mean by stuck in a rut?
It's so true. And ruts, honestly, when you're in them, they do kind of suck. So that's how you know you're in one. Because life just feels like it sucks. And you're like, well, what the hell's going on? Everything's going pretty well. Everything's going pretty well, usually. Nothing's like, it's not super great. It's not super shitty. Because when something's super shitty, but like life is other than that good, like you can kind of get out of that, pretty fast. But ruts are weird. People stay in ruts for a very long time.
It's elusive.
Yeah, it can be elusive.
Like you're fighting a phantom. Like you don't know what's wrong for a minute because you're just stuck in something normal.
Yeah, and it feels like it's so easy to get comfortable with it. That's the worst part, I think, about ruts is the idea that, like, where am I sitting with this? Why did it just come almost out of nowhere? It feels like, and it's usually not out of nowhere. Usually it's at a point where you're like, you started getting comfortable with something in your life, and then you just realized that it wasn't enough for you, or maybe something needed to change, or, it just wasn't going the way that you'd potentially hoped. And, that's part of it. That's all part of ruts. It's like, what's going on? It's kind of like something just feels off usually. And it can come from a lot of things. It can come from like stagnation in your work. It can come from stagnation in your relationship. It can come from, the repetition of the same behaviors from friends and stuff. Like it can be from a lot of things. It can come from, repeating old habits. Like a lot of things. But chances are it's something. It's usually a specific area of life that is affected, and then it kind of trickles into other areas of your life.
Yeah, I think it's important to mention it's not necessarily like something immediately wrong. It's just kind of like slowly it's something that slips into a routine of normalcy, and it's just kind of like the excitement saps its way out of life, and then you're in a rut. So you feel bad, but you can't specifically point to one single thing that's like, that's really bad, I should fix that. It's just kind of like everything is kind of brought down a level and becomes boring.
And then, like, it's funny, kind of when you're out of it, you can almost, like, specify, oh, it was this thing. Because usually you don't want to make major life changes. You kind of just want to assess things as they are slowly. And I think one of the worst ruts you can be in is in, like, relationship, obviously, or, like, your job. Because, like, obviously you're not just going to quit a job impulsively. And if you've been in a relationship for a long time, you're probably not going to end your relationship very impulsively, right? You want to make these decisions with a calm mind, with a sound mind. It's something you sleep on, right? Like you can't just get out of a rut. You kind of have to reassess while you're in it and say, why am I here? What's going on? Why is this happening? Is this even a rut, or am I just like down because of the weather? Or am I just, something happened at work where it puts me in this slightly worsened mood? Or if you had a change in one of your relationships, you'd be like, well, I'm not used to this. How do I get used to this? And then not let it affect the rest of my life. Like, it's really weird, but you kind of know when it happens. And it's one of those things where it's like, It is a feeling. Like nothing may have changed. Nothing may have
Yeah.
changed except yourself. And then you're like, oh, it was me. Like I changed, something in me changed, and that's why other things don't feel the same now. So it's definitely this internal thing. Um, and it's good not to lie to other people about it. It's actually kind of important to be like, hey, I think something happened inside myself that's making me look at something differently or making me like or dislike a thing differently. And it kind of helps you to like ground yourself and reprioritize and realize like it can be a good thing because you realize like my growth doesn't end. It'll automatically happen even if I'm not specifically pursuing it, which is kind of
Mhm.
really refreshing. It's like good to be able to get that. Like, because some people will just be like, oh, I'm growing so well and I'm kind of just at a good pace and that's fine. That's good. And I don't know now what else to do. And then a rut will be like, oh, okay. Now you're kind of forced to reassess things.
It's kind of like you grow all the time, but you don't always realize which way you're gonna grow,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I guess you could say.
Very true. So I think, as we got into like what a rut is, obviously how to realize you're in a rut. It's kind of like a feeling. It's a feeling of just like kind of something unsatisfactory is occurring
Hmm.
in one or more aspects of your life. Um, the way you're going about your life may change, or you're on a different path. You might be put on a different path than what you originally thought, or something might
Yeah.
need to change that's outside of you that you can choose to change. So like I said, a job, relationship, you might feel like you're in a rut if you're like 23 or 24 and you've been working for a while and you still live with your family and you go, well, I can afford my own place now. I have a good amount of savings. Even if I rent for like a year or so, um, a few years, I can live alone and like have an independent life. Maybe that's like the next step for you, right? It's like based on
Hmm.
stages in life. Obviously, if you're in your marriage and like you don't have kids and it's been like a few years and you go, okay, maybe that's kind of the next step in our marriage is to like start to have kids together, right? Same with obviously high school. It's like changes every year. Chances are you won't get into a rut in high school, and if you do, you might want to change the course or your career trajectory, and that's fine. I feel like ruts start to happen around college or just after college and university, and then from there you can kind of be like, oh, okay, this is what's happening. Um, you know, and it's good to be able to make a decision with a clear head, especially in college and university. This is usually my take on that. It's like if you're in third year and you want to drop out, maybe just suck it up for like the next year or so because like you're already in 2 years, you're already more than halfway done. If you're able to tolerate it before, tolerate it till the end, right? And hopefully something
Hmm.
good will come out of it. Unless you're like vehemently like, oh no, 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 I have this idea, I have this dream I want to pursue with every inch of my being. I have to do that, then do that. Unless it's literally like this extreme feeling inside of you to go pursue something that seems like a very out of the ordinary, then don't. Then just, kind of take it for a year or so and don't let the money go to waste. Don't let your time go to waste. Get what you needed. It will probably prove useful in the future. Like, especially if you're doing STEM, right? If you're doing some sort of engineering thing, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, if you're like, oh, I'm
I
starting
don't
not to
think
like it as
education's
much.
bad. Like,
No, it's good. It's overall it's good, I would say. So if you're in like
mhm.
engineering or something and you're like, well, I don't think I want to become an engineer, but I think it's still useful to know and it's good to have on my resume, and I'm already spent time and money on it, so I might as well keep going. Just make it easier for yourself and like don't burden yourself with like getting crazy good grades. Don't burden yourself with not being able to work because you study so much. Don't burden yourself with like, oh, I'm still going to do the hardest path of engineering. Like, go into go on a slightly easier path and kind of ride it out as you've been doing before. Maybe get a job so you can save money as well. Spend more time with family and friends rather than studying so much or chasing the grades so much. Because like at the end of the day, like I know for most jobs, honestly, it's important to know and understand theory, but at the end of the day, like you will learn more on the job than you probably did in your university class, and that goes for a lot of
Definitely.
fields. Um, except medical school, because then like you should probably know what you're doing before you go into a hospital. But I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate the way the university system's set up.
yeah, it is. I really don't like it.
It's
I think the college system is better. I think specialized college degrees are like the way to go right now. You'll make money right away. You'll get a job right out of college. For any young men who are deciding, look towards college to get diplomas, certificates, and even degrees potentially to do things that pay like university education but are trades oriented. So like electrical engineering. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you can do that in a lot of colleges. Um,
yeah,
Becoming like a foreman. You start as an apprentice, but you can easily move up in the field if you're a relatively smart guy. It's like people think you go into the trades, you're working trades your whole life. It's like, no, no, no. A lot of the guys who are very smart, they work the trades, they know exactly what they're doing to get as much experience as possible, and then they run sites. And that's where the real money
yeah.
comes in. Or you run your own business, right? You can do like commercial electricity or lighting. You can do low voltage wiring. You can do plumbing, like
There's
brand new
it's
build
definitely
plumbing.
something to be said for being well-rounded because in the
Mhm.
if you're like there's a lot of university degrees that only allow you to work in one specific niche that requires like some major corporation to employ you, and you can't go work for yourself because it just doesn't make sense. So you're
Yeah,
basically stuck as, I don't want to say slave, but anyone who's paying you, you're basically their slave, is, you're stuck to whatever major corporation, you're stuck living in a big city, like depending on what you choose. So you should consider that as well. Um, and I think in the future, the way um, jobs are going to work and things like that, um, those jobs that are really niche and specialized aren't going to be as valuable and they aren't going to be as secure. And, I don't think those corporations give a shit about you, and, you shouldn't give a shit about them either because it should be equal. And, yeah, I think you're better off with more skills being like a broader skill set that is able to like run your own business and kind of thing, bring people together, focus on like having a good work ethic, a good discipline. This
yeah.
is kind of off topic to being in a rut, but
Mm.
um, yeah, actually it's not really because if you're in a rut, that is kind of like you're specializing really hard in one thing, and you know, broader a broader view would be less likely to get stuck in a rut because you're focusing on more different things at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. Like I guess we'll obviously get into later, like how to get out of a rut. But I think going into like, where does a rut start and end kind of thing? And what does it feel like being like staying in it for a while? So obviously with a job or something, if you've been specializing for a while, it can get quite boring maybe. So, getting a new hobby can pull people out of ruts or
Hmm.
restarting an old hobby. Personally, I felt like life's been going pretty good, and then I kind of got into a rut, and I'm like, you know what? I need to go back to doing hobbies that I really enjoyed, and I kind of stopped doing them. And why did I stop doing them? Well, I was prioritizing different things. But then you kind of shift back and forth between prioritizing things that are important and then, changing what that means to you. And then, going back into old hobbies that you may have quit for one reason or another. I know there's a lot of hobbies I quit before gym shut down that I would definitely go back into. And I probably have the
Hmm.
time for it, but I don't have the money. So so my goal is to get back into my hobbies, save money, build it up, and then get back into them once I have the money for it, right? It was definitely
Yeah,
worth it at the
I
time.
relate to that.
It was definitely worth it at the time to be into those hobbies. They prevented me from getting into ruts because I could focus my energy of growth, like my energy
Hmm.
of my potential energy, I could focus it into growing, in hobbies that weren't related to relationships or weren't related to work. I think the worst thing men can do is not have like a job or hobby where they dedicate like a large portion of their life to. I think it's like, again, a large portion, not the whole thing. For me,
Hmm.
it's like a third, a third, a third. So one third is like family, friends, and enjoyment. One third is like career and hobbies, and one third is sleep. So um, sleep, rest, and relaxation, essentially. So if you're splitting your life
Yeah.
up like that, you can kind of, unfortunately, the least amount of time you have is with like family, friends, and enjoyment, but a large portion of your time will be specifically focused on hobbies and or your job or your career. Um,
Hmm. You could also fit hobbies in with your friends and family too, which is
yeah,
pretty
I
cool.
know, but I mean, I wouldn't want to make it so rigid, right? That it's like
No, but yeah, yeah,
a career is
true.
so large a portion of your life that it's like a whole third of your life, which it probably won't be, right? Because the reality is like we think of that in today's standards. Like me as a young guy, I'm going to be working for a third of my day minimum, and that's fine.
Hmm.
But not when you're retired, and not when you were a teenager. Were you working that
No.
long? So that's why I say like we're talking about a total lifespan. Yes, it's gonna look less like a career was a third of your life unless you want that, and it'll be more.
Yeah.
Chances are, if you're very career driven and ambitious, chances are more than a third of your life will be career. Um, but how many people are truly like that? It's very far and few between. Most people are just doing jobs so they can make money to support their family. It's secure. It's something that's decent. They're kind of good at. They somewhat enjoy. You know, that's the average person, right? They're not gonna. They don't love their job, but they're just tolerated enough so they can make money and they have things to look forward to, like outside of their career, and that's pretty important.
Hmm. Definitely. I'm actually curious because I feel like I actually have a lot of experience being in ruts and then getting out of ruts and then getting back in ruts. But I'm just wondering if you had like a story or something, if you feel like it. Specific example that made you think of being in a rut.
Well, I'm in a rut right now. I'm in a rut right now, and it's kind of like, well, this is relevant. Let's talk about this. Why the hell am
Hmm.
I in a rut? Obviously, I can't be very specific because then it's just like, what's the point? But let's just say career change, relationship change, um,
Hmm.
you know, self change, which again is usually the biggest thing. And it's kind of weird. It's funny. It's like you have everything you need right now. What else? And then you're kind of like,
Yeah, but
something
there's
is.
something
I
else.
I feel like there is something missing. I feel like there is something missing. And in a rut, honestly, I know it sounds bad because it's like, oh, you're just going giving into your emotions. It's like, well, yes, that's you are in a rut for a reason. Look inward,
Hmm.
meditate more, pray more, um,
Write
focus
it
on
down.
yourself more, write it all down, change your habits. I think the number one thing for getting out of a rut when you're in a rut is changing your habits to find something that's healthier, that makes your life better, improves your life. Like I think I'm gonna start doing morning journaling and nighttime journaling for 5 minutes. Nothing crazy, just 5 minutes. Because chances are I'm the type of person where if I sit down to do something and I'm enjoying it, I will do it for longer than 5 minutes. So I'm gonna set out
Yeah.
like 20 minutes extra in the morning before I go to work to like journal, pray, meditate, whatever, stretch, work out, whatever it is. And then at night, I'll
It's a
set
good
out the
idea.
same thing about an hour before I go to bed. I want to I want to put my phone away outside my room. I'm probably gonna journal for 10 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes, maybe do some stretches for 10 minutes, and then I want to read for about half an hour, 20 minutes to half an hour, and then pray for X amount of time before I go to bed, and that's it.
Hmm.
And make
See, the
room
writing
for
thing is. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. No, I was gonna say for daily prayer and meditation as well. Little, even if it's increments, 5 minutes. You take a break at work, 15-minute break. Okay, spend 5 of those minutes just sitting alone, praying or meditating. Then go talk with your buddies or whatever your coworkers. You know,
Hmm.
or as they're talking, just kind of sit in silence and listen. That can be meditative in itself to be like, let me get out of myself for a second. It's good. It's good to have that variety. But sorry, go ahead. You asked a question about
Uh,
writing.
No, I was just gonna talk about writing for a second. Just that it's. I think in this specific situation, being in a rut and being like feeling stuck, just being able to understand what you actually want, and I think that comes from writing because, like I'll say, recently, like the past half of the month, maybe, um, I've also felt like kind of like a rut type, kind of stuck, um, not sure what I actually want to do, and like I've written maybe like 20 pages in a journal in just like a
Mhm.
couple of days, and
Wow.
it's just like just put all my thoughts in the paper, then do a 10-minute meditation, then reflect on it again, and it's like just repeat that over and over again.
Hmm.
And I feel like I since I've done that, I know myself much better, and I feel like I'm actually on track to get out of that rut now, which is helpful. But like I said, I feel like I have tons of experience with
Yeah,
this. Like it
yeah,
just happens. It happens to me so many times. So, well, I guess not often, but I can see the cycles that I go through. These things, like I start something, I don't like it. I go to something else. It's a rut. I change again. I go do something crazy, change again. Then I don't want to do that. And like at a certain
yeah,
point, I'm like,
yeah.
maybe I'll never be happy. You know what I'm saying?
It's so true.
I'm not.
Never
I'm
be
not that
satisfied.
that black pilled. I'm not. I'm not that black pilled. But even if I do find out, it's like, okay, I'll never be satisfied. It's like, well, then
Yeah.
I can just keep learning constantly and just keep, riding the tiger of this little cycle that I'm on.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's interesting. It can be very difficult to find purpose inside a career when, you know, so Zoomers essentially have this thing where it's very different from boomers, it's very different from millennials. Millennials and boomers probably won't understand this, maybe younger millennials, but like not only have Zoomers had to essentially deal with their every single day lives, right?
Mm,
Being online forces you to make decisions about what you think about a bunch of other stuff. Just being online in any capacity, right?
that's
It's
true.
an exposure to a large amount of information, whether you even listen or not, whether it's true or not. Um, you're forced into it, you're exposed to it. Your brain has to decide what it wants to do with the information it's given. A lot of people give in completely. A lot of people don't believe what they're seeing, become hyper skeptical. A lot of people
Hmm.
kind of just shrug it off and say, "I don't really give a crap about anything. I'm going to go about my life." Those are like the more boomer types, cogs in the machine, simple life, and that's good and that's fine. And you need people like that in society. You need people to maintain society. But what happens when the maintenance of society is not enough? You need society to be moved forward once again in a better direction.
Yeah.
Or will you ever be satisfied with a simple job and a simple career in a 9 to 5 or a 7 to 3 or like
Personally,
with
I
a
don't
wife
think
and a
so.
family? I mean, neither. And that's why we seek out ventures like this. We seek out ventures like the
Hmm.
podcast. You seek out political effort. You seek out political activism. Shit posting is one thing, but shit posting is a psyop.
Shit post.
So, so
So true.
I know we're talking about a rut right now, but shit posting is absolutely a psyop. You can absolutely shit post in your free time, but it should not be the only
Hmm.
thing you're doing um, to advance a specific political belief. You can't just be shit posting. Okay, it's not enough. You have to be
Hmm.
doing other things and shit posting, right?
Yeah.
It's not this end all be all. You will not find your purpose there. Yeah, it's funny, it's entertaining, it's enjoyable. Everyone loves it. It's silly, it's goofy, but be silly and goofy in real life. Be funny. Push
Yeah.
the envelope with your friends. Push the envelope with your family.
Yeah.
Maybe
Shit,
you'll find
shit
new
post in
friends.
real life.
Yeah, be a silly and goofy fellow. Just enjoy the world. Enjoy the clown pill.
2022 is the year of the goofball.
It is the year of
It's
the
it's
rapscallion.
time to be goofy.
It's the year of the scallywag. It's the year of the
The year of the ne'er do well. We
the ne'er do
we
well, the
engage in a little
absolute
bit of tomfoolery
yes, some
out here.
predicaments, some rapscallionism, some buffoonery. We engage in soirees
Absolutely.
and shindigs. We're not sticking to parties. We are being obnoxious and rambunctious. Uh, 2022 is absolutely the year of the clown pilled. It is the year for
Absolutely.
the people who realize life is absolutely meant to be taken seriously in some aspects,
Oh,
and
oh,
in other aspects, it should not be taken seriously whatsoever. It's the year for massive change. It's the year for dark mega.
mhm.
It's the year. Bro, I saw that on. Someone sent me a tweet today. I'm like, what is dark mega? I don't
Dark
want to
man.
know.
I saw that.
You heard it here first. Just, it's very silly and very goofy. But it's okay. Let it be
Yeah,
silly. Let it be goofy. Um, it's not the end of
you
the
just have to
world.
laugh at this
Even
stuff,
if the
man.
world is going to end, what do you gain by not laughing about it?
Exactly.
Send in the clowns. Do me a favor, send in the clowns. We need the clowns. We need our jokers. We need our mischievous ne'er-do-wells. We need you guys. How do you get out of a rut is not taking the rut seriously almost and being like, this is
Hmm.
only one point in my life. It's not the end all be all of my life. It's not the end all be all of my existence. I'm simply here right now. It's a good meditative fact. It's a good fact like of life in general. Is you are only here right now. In the future you'll be somewhere else, and in the past you definitely were
Hmm.
somewhere else. So look to the past to see where you've come from. Look to the present to see where you are, and look to the future to see where you could be going. So again, it's
Yeah, you
lived out
always have
potential.
options.
Yeah, and your options change over time, and you grow and you change
Yeah,
as a person, which changes your option. Um,
yeah. People worry about like the way their past and now affects their options, but there's obviously no point in ever worrying about that. Like, just look at what's in front of you and then make that decision. And try to look a little bit further ahead so you have more favorable options in the future. But all you can do is like really focus on the present. Like, what can I actually do right now? And I just want to say
yeah,
the psyoping thing, the shit posting, it's so true. Like, you're literally programming or you're being programmed.
yeah,
There's no way around it. So
no, and you have to
just be
get
a
outside
goofy,
of the
silly guy.
programming. You have to get
Yeah.
outside of the programming. Um, only shitposting all day is exactly what they want you to do. Don't do that.
Hmm.
Do it once in a while in your spare time when you've
I
worked
mean, you
out
could
that
be in a
day.
rut shit posting all day. You could be stuck in a rut, and that's all you do.
Yeah, it's like we're
We
not
should
this
emphasize
this
that.
podcast is for people who do not want to be neats. If you're very
Yeah.
comfortable being a neat, like I'm sorry to hear that. I think there's something wrong with you. I think you need to change. And not in a negative way, not in an evil way, but genuinely like you need to
Hmm.
find the thing within yourself that sets you apart from others and follow it like wholeheartedly. Even if it is a very online position, even if it is a very niche market, do the thing that you think will bring you the most purposeful existence, right? Do the thing that sets your soul on fire. Um,
Mm.
and I think that finds us with a poem that Nordic here really
Yes, I love
enjoys.
this poem. So this
What's
is
the title?
one of my
What's
favorite
the title?
favorite poems of all time. I actually don't even know the title.
Okay,
My
that's
favorite
fine.
poem of all time, by the way.
Where'd you hear it first originally?
Oh man, I want to say like just on just some post I saw it,
Hmm.
and I was like, man, I really love that. And then I kind of forgot about it. And okay, this is gonna sound weird, but like I was journaling at one point, and then I just
Hmm.
like wrote out one of the lines of this poem without
Yeah.
even realizing that that's what it was from. And then um, I was like, yo, that sounds so good. And then I looked it up after when I actually saw it a meme that kind of paraphrased the line of this. So basically, the
Hmm.
meme was, in the depths of it's over, I found within myself an invincible we are back. And it very much resonated with me. And then I like
That's so sick.
kind of remembered that I found this poem. So it's by, I don't even know if it's a poem. It might just be like an excerpt from his writing, but it's by Albert Camus, the French philosopher. So he says, in the midst of hate, I found there was within me an invincible love. In the midst of tears, I found there was within me an invincible smile. In the midst of chaos, I found there was within me an invincible calm. I realized through it all that in the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer, and that makes me happy, for it says that no matter how hard the world pushes against me, within me there is something stronger, something better, pushing right back.
Absolutely. What
Absolutely
is
inspiring.
what is that poem? What does that mean to you? Like, there's a lot to dissect in that poem. Like, we're literally
Mm.
going to do our literary analysis right now. There's a lot to dissect in that poem. There's a very specific language, right? So you start. You really break down for me how that speaks to you and potentially your character.
Yeah, so midst of winter, this is like the seasonal depression, right? He says
Hmm.
he finds in the midst of winter there's an invincible summer. So the summer is like the return of light. Um, and you can see this in just in psychology. We know that every winter people get depressed because the sun goes away, the days get
Hmm.
shorter, it's dreary, the weather sucks. Um, and then as the summer returns, the sun comes out. You know, you have spring, you have this rebirth, this outflow of life um, and happiness, which is just a bit of symbolism there. But
Hmm.
basically, like what it means to me is that no matter how dark the winter gets, no matter how like dark the night gets, something that always happens. The sun always returns, right?
Hmm.
The summer always returns. It's something you can count on. It's something that's like just programmed into nature that it's always going to happen. So if you say within yourself that there's always an invincible summer
Hmm.
to coming back from the midst of winter, um, and like he says, no matter how hard the world pushes against me, there's something stronger, something better within me that's pushing back against it.
Hmm.
For me, it's that's the fundamental stuff right there. Like anytime I've ever felt depressed, I just think um, this amount of sadness that I feel actually makes me feel alive because there is so much range to the human emotion. So if I'm able to feel this level of sadness, I usually come back, and maybe this is like some kind of mental illness, but like the next day I'll
Mental
feel like
illness.
insanely happy, like the next level of happy, like
That's like
I'll
catharsis.
be insanely motivated the next day. If I'm ever
Yeah.
um, like feeling depressed one day, the next day I'll be like up super high.
I think
I don't think it's
Zoomers
mental illness. I think I'm just like built different. But
I think Zoomers' emotional regulation just be like totally fucked. But
mm,
that's a story for another day. Um, I'm
yeah,
gonna
we'll
give
get into it
my
later.
little literary, yeah, later. I'm gonna give my little literary analysis on this nice little
Go
poem
for it.
by Mr. Albert Camus here. So I think there's a lot of things to really dissect here. In the midst of hate, I found there was within me an invincible love. So, like, just there alone is like so much to unpack there. The duality of man, right?
Hmm.
The existence of one thing, being part of one thing, but being from another thing. A source within you that doesn't die out. The idea of invincibility and immortality, right? Hatred, love, like these strong feelings that are against and for one another, that comparison of like dark and light, in the midst of hate, in the midst of the darkness, I am the light. There's light within me. um,
Hmm.
the midst of winter, the midst of the cold, the midst of the dark, when you're in the dark, when you're in the cold, it's like it's hard to see the light except when you turn inward a lot of the time. So what the heck does that mean? Like, there's just a lot there, man. There's so much symbolism. It's so rich. Think about poetry that's so rich, the narrative story.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's awesome. It's
Okay,
like
well, one thing
drinking a
I just
wine.
do want to mention, um, it's like he says within myself, right? Within me,
Hmm.
there's invincible uh, love or invincible calm. And like as I said, like the sun always returns, like every night, every morning the sun returns after the night. Every summer, um, life returns after the winter. This is like fundamentally built into the universe
Mm-hmm.
by God, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and that's my opinion. But obviously, and the human being is a microcosm for the universe because the human being is heaven and earth. It's the mind and the body. So the fact that within the earth, um, the cosm of the earth, you have the sun always returning. You know that within yourself, since you're just a micro version of that,
Mm-hmm.
every time you're depressed, you know that the sun is going to return
Well,
within yourself. You know
you
that
can
happiness.
know.
You can know because you know that you
Yeah.
are the same. You're from the
I
same
think
source as
I
all of
think
this.
real depression is like when you can't know that. But like sadness and like
Probably.
being in a rut and being unmotivated is like you know there's something there, but right now you're in the darkness and like that's fine. I think
Hmm.
I know we're talking about ruts, but like at the end of the day, a lot of people are genuinely depressed and they just have
A
periods
rut
of
can definitely make you
happiness.
depressed.
And a rut can make you depressed. A rut can make you think as if there's no hope and there's no coming out of this
Hmm.
and it's so over and like it's not over unless you choose it to be, right? It's there's something weird about like I heard something about the idea of prayer recently where it's like when you ask God for something that he absolutely wants for you and he knows you need, act as if it's already done. You
Mm.
act as if literally he's already done it for you, right? So something like that would be like, oh God, I'm actually feeling pretty bad right now. Like take away this pain, take away this feeling of like morose and melancholy, and he will do it. If he knows you need it, he
Hmm.
will do it like right away. Um, I think something else about this poem too is like the almost like the beatitudious nature. Um, the idea of like you being better than what the world throws at you. For the
Mm.
simply for the sake of the fact that like you are loved and you can love others. You know, there's something very powerful to that. There's something very powerful when he says, you know, no matter how hard the world pushes against me, there's something stronger, something better pushing right back. And it's almost like it's our duty. I think he implies it is your duty to like find that.
Mm.
The fact that it's in within him means there's a potential for it to be in us all, right? Because we're all human and we can all share a very similar experience, obviously in different circumstances, but a similar experience nonetheless. We experience
Hmm.
pain, suffering, joy, like everyone else does. But how do we find that thing inside of us that's so much better? Is that I think comes from looking to the past uh, and finding value where you thought you didn't
Hmm.
have any. So that's always a good structure. I think with journaling, I think I'm going to add into my progress of like one good thing that I know I've done in the past because I think to make me remember my own value and to be grateful for the position I'm in today, regardless of what it is. I think
Mm.
gratitude and truth and self-respect are like these things that I personally need to work on. I think a lot of guys may realize like, oh, I actually have value. I'm just not realizing it. I'm not actualizing it. I have potential, but I'm not actualizing it. A lot of people get
Hmm.
overwhelmed with potential, and that can put them in a rut. Oh, I have so many options. It's like, yeah, you can have a lot of roads, but at the end of the day, you'll have one final pathway, one final destination. So aim we've talked about this like multiple times, but aim at that final point, aim at that final destination, and the road will pave itself for you.
Hmm.
The road will be paved as you walk it in a weird way. Like again, we are in the present. We're paving the future as we speak. The past has already occurred. You can look backwards, but you cannot move backwards. You should look backwards so you can learn for the future. Like the point of history and the point of the narratives and the point of anything that teaches you something is so that in the future you can make a better choice. You can make a better decision. You can learn from the mistakes of others. And that's like wisdom, right? Knowledge is like, learning from your own mistakes, sure, but like wisdom is learning from others' mistake. And I don't even have that yet. I'm very stubborn.
Mm.
I want to learn from my own mistakes. I go, well, I might know better, so I'm going to do it. And it's like, why
Yeah.
am I so fucking stupid? Why am I so
I feel like
arrogant?
everybody does that.
It's such an egotistical thing.
It's like,
to think
why didn't I
that
just
you
listen
know
to my
better.
parents when they said that?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, what is happening? Why do I not choose to learn from others older and wiser than me? And I think that's where the idea of like respecting your elders comes from, is because they've gone through a lot of the same crap you have, even though it's in different
Yeah.
circumstances. So they understand the plight of difficulty and suffering, regardless if it's exactly the same as yours. There's some absolutes in the ideas of difficulty and suffering and what people tend to suffer from. So some people understand it better than you, and you should listen to them. I think a lot of Zoomers nowadays don't respect authority because authority really doesn't have much to offer them. But the reality is the elderly do, and the
Mm.
people older than us do, regardless of the authority being quality. The humans are decent still. The humans that you may know may be decent, and there's no reason not to listen to them. There's no reason not to try to get to know your grandparents or even your parents a bit better and understand their difficulties when they were children and say, oh, I have the same, you know, like there's these tenets that just continue on in life, the feeling of belonging to a group, friends, a career, money, relationships. Like those things happen to every human in one way or another. Just because you're a
Yeah, that's
Zoomer and you
true.
have the internet doesn't mean you don't suffer the same heartbreak that your dad or mom may have suffered when their high school sweetheart broke up with them, or they broke up with their high school sweetheart. It doesn't like change. It's one of these things that's like inalienable over time. Suffering changes person to person, yes, but the suffering itself remains, and remains in a cyclical pattern. And
Mm.
understanding that is understanding like humanity itself. It's understanding yourself as well, because you realize, well, you're in a rut right now, but before you weren't, and after this you won't be. So you kind of like almost like enjoy the rut. It's here for a reason. It's happened before for reasons, and it's probably going to happen again for some reason. I think one of the biggest things people think of when we talk about ruts is like a midlife crisis. Everyone hears that
Yeah.
word all the time. Midlife crisis. What does a midlife crisis mean? What does it really
A lot of
mean?
people don't think about the quarter life crisis too. Like there's also
Well, that's a
the
Zoomer thing.
crisis that happens. Yeah, it's like
That's a
when you're
Zoomer thing
between
because we
20
have
and
so much,
25.
but that's because that's like more recent because we have so much crap going on.
Mm.
Um, or like you are at a stepping stone into life where you're like, well, what can my future be like? What's this? Like, what should I do now? X, Y, Z. And it's like, um, there's really no rush in a weird way. Like you shouldn't be in a rush to know
Hmm.
exactly what you're going to do with your life. You should kind of just do it and do something that's worthwhile as you're doing it. You shouldn't think, oh, is this worthwhile? No, no, no. I know what is worthwhile. That's what I'm going to pursue, and then pursue it to its fullest extent, and don't deny yourself of that reality, which I think people tend to do. You know, but again, back to this midlife crisis thing, which again we can talk about quarter life crisis, but I think that's a different story. I think the idea of midlife
Mm.
crisis is they didn't have much options. People kind of said, well, this is the career I'm going to pick. I know it makes good money. I'm going to go to university. I'm going to get married. I'm going to have kids. Cookie cutter, cookie cutter, cookie cutter life, where everyone was kind of doing the exact same thing, which isn't necessarily bad. But the problem is it's bad if it wasn't of your own volition. That's when it gets bad. And these midlife
Hmm.
crises probably come from people who were like, did I even want my life to go this way? And maybe they hadn't thought about it before. And it can cause potentially a lot of problems. I haven't heard much about it lately. I really haven't. Maybe it's changed. Maybe it's become the quarter life crisis and people kind of stabilize it more early or not. Who knows? But I just know
Yeah.
the term over the hill, right? Being over 40 was when your life starts going downhill. And it's like, well, that mentality automatically will put your life in a downward spiral.
Yeah, if you assume that's gonna happen, then yeah, it will happen.
Yeah, like
So
I get it. Your body goes, your mind goes, but like your soul doesn't stop growing. I think in those peak, there's something about people who are elderly who are still very miserable, where they've
hmm
been miserable their whole life and they've just gotten more miserable. And there's people who are overjoyed to exist at their age.
hmm
They're overfilled with joy. Love flows out of every inch of them. They're almost saint-like. You see this in like the elderly grandmas who pray all the time and like love their grandkids with all their heart. Spoil them probably
hmm
a little too much, right? But it's because they love them so much. They want to give every last ounce of their being back to the people that they've helped to produce, right? And that's an ideal almost. That's something you should look forward to
I
being.
agree.
The grandfather who's silly and goofy, but he's more than happy to take his grandson and granddaughters out fishing and hunting and playing sports. And even if he can't move as quickly as them, he knows a thing or two. Uh, he can still trick them and mess with them and have just enough energy to keep them going. And, the wisdom really comes out in that old age. It's a beautiful thing to look at. I'm not going to rush it, obviously, but I'm really looking forward to
I'm
the day
literally
where I
tearing
can.
up. I love grandparents so much.
Yeah, it's sweet, man. It's a
It's,
beautiful
it's
thing, man.
awesome.
When you have good grandparents, you kind of get it. You
Yeah,
start to just get it. If you have bad grandparents, I'm really sorry to hear that, because it
yeah,
can be
me too.
quite a detriment to have people who you would think would be full of love and hope for your future. They're kind of just like miserable and angry and like. I know how we're talking about ruts. I love how we're talking about this when we're talking about ruts and we're talking about like the end of a lifetime. But
Yeah,
there's something I think it's important to realize: what is a happy death and what is a sad death? And it's an oxymoron, because a happy death is a sad death and a sad death is a happy death. So what do I mean by
oh,
that?
I know what you mean. Yeah,
Essentially,
it's a good one.
essentially what I mean is it's a happy death when someone who dies and you're extremely sad over it. That's a very happy death. You know why it's a happy death? Because they've been
They
so
had a good
good.
life.
Exactly.
Yeah,
They've been so good to you and the people around them. They've been so good to everyone that people will miss them. They love them and they will want to pass on whatever they gave to them to others, hopefully. That's a happy death. It's a very happy death. That's why I don't cry. I don't cry at funerals for people who've had good lives and there's a lot of people at the funeral. I cry at
hmm
funerals where there's no one there. There's no one to mourn this person. There's no one to miss them. There's no one to love them past death. Those are the people I
yeah,
truly mourn for, because those people have truly died. And that's a sad death,
yeah.
because it was
Because
a
you really
happy death
only what's
because no
that
one cared.
that saying? It's like I think it might be like an old Norse thing. They say it's like you die the first time when you actually die, and you die the second time, the last time someone utters your name.
Yeah, there's also a
It's like,
Mexican idealism too.
is it a Mexican thing?
I
It's
think it's
like,
also a Mexican thing.
well, it's just kind of universal culturally, I think, or something similar to that. Like, once people don't remember you anymore, that's it. But being remembered is a way of living on past your actual death. And I just
Yeah,
want to say,
exactly.
like, about the grandparents thing. Like, I was absolutely blessed, um, with grandparents. Like, all my grandparents were very good to me. I can like point to specific things, in all of my grandfathers, and I say all because I actually had three. Um, because my dad's stepdad like also was like a really important grandfather to me as well, and like I can see like in all of them specific traits that I now have, and yeah, like they're all great to me. I literally have a picture of each one on my desk,
Hmm.
all three of my grandfathers, and yeah, that's actually a big part of what motivates me is trying to be honorable for them because I really want to feel connected to the past and also coming into the future. And I really, as I liked it when you said that that should be a goal for these younger guys. Like, don't even just think about being a father. Think about how you'll be as a grandfather. Think about
Look
how you'll be at
forward.
the end of your life.
Yeah,
I think it's
and that's
super
why
important.
for me, like grandpas are like goofy, kind of, and silly and
hmm
fun and knowledgeable. Um,
Yeah, because
and
they can
and
be more
that's
than your dad, right?
yeah, they should be, and they
They
should
don't
be
have
in
to
their
be
own
as
way.
strict. Yeah,
No,
so
like
true.
the way I look at it is I remember my grandfather playing soccer with us and like making stuff with us and wanting us to do things, even though we wouldn't want to. He would try at least, right? Um,
Hmm.
And there's a skill in that to be able to draw in your grandkids to do things that you enjoy and have them enjoy it and be part of the tradition. Like that's a skill. Um, that's what I want for the future. I make a lot of stuff with my grandfather now, and I want to keep doing that, and I want to do it for my kids and my grandkids. I don't want it to
Hmm.
stop with him. I want it to pass on. It's part of our history. It's part of our future. And that's another way to get out of a rut. Look forward. Look forward to the potentialities of why this is happening to you. Look forward to the potentiality of how will I talk to my grandkids about this rut that I was in 2022. And that's why you
Mm.
should journal, by the way. If you want another
Yeah.
reason to journal,
Remember all this stuff.
when you're old and your memories are dying, you have these books to be remembered by yourself. And at the end of the day, if you have some sketchy ass shit that you wrote in those books, well, who cares? Chances are no one's going to read
Yeah.
them until you're dead. So just write. Just write the
Yeah.
most embarrassing, weirdest thoughts you've ever had in your head and be like, my grandpa was kind of crazy, but I guess I kind of relate. And it's like, yeah, because humanity
Yeah.
is this dirty, dirty, gross, ugly thing that we make into beauty. We
Mm.
create beauty, not create.
I love that.
I'll create. We don't create anything. We produce beauty out of
We
disorder.
like mold it, right?
We mold beauty,
Shape it.
yes, out of chaos. That is order. That is what order is for. So don't think of a
Hmm.
rut as this world-ending thing. It's more like, how can I enjoy this? How can I enjoy this? This is the clown. That's the clown pill.
Yeah. The
It's
clown
not
just
black
laughs.
pilled. It's not white pilled. The clown simply laughs. When he's high on a cloud, he's laughing. When he's down in the dumps, he's laughing and crying. But he's still
Yeah.
laughing. It's all about being a sad, silly clown all the
Hmm.
time, 100% of the time. Knowing when to take things seriously in matter of speech, but in your mind, always be laughing. Always be learning. Always be laughing as a sad, silly clown.
It's a good motto. It's like Albert Camus said in that poem that we discussed earlier. He's saying he realizes this, right? He says, "I found within me." So it's something that's not obvious that
Hmm.
there's this invincible summer within you.
You
It's
have to
not
search
like
for it.
immediately, yeah, you have to find it. And that's why the journaling is key. The introspection work is key. You actually have to know yourself well enough to understand what you want. And I'm guilty of like I had podcast episodes where I've said like, "Hey, this is key, this is important," and I've also neglected the work myself,
Yeah, of
and like
course.
recently have done a lot of it, and that's why I want to talk about it because it's like, man, why didn't I do this sooner? It's so important, and then
Yeah.
you'll go from the feeling of being in a rut and just feeling crappy, and then all of a sudden, a couple dozen pages written later, and you're like, okay, I actually understand where I might be going now.
Hmm. Hmm.
Huge game changer. Huge amount of motivation created just because now it's like, okay, I know where to go.
Yeah. And sometimes being in a rut is just you being a massive bitch.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. And just being afraid of the future because it's unknown and it's scary. And
Hmm.
you're not trusting God, bro. That's what that is. It's a very hard thing to do, but eventually you get used to it. I know. We don't like being religious on this, but at the end of the day, you have to trust, regardless of your religion, you have to trust that the future will be potentially better than the past. Without that, it's just nihilism, pure
Hmm.
nihilism. Um, and it's just life just sucks when there's no value to it, or at least you don't want to give a
Even
value
e-
to it.
even if you're not religious, you could just think about it like, okay, the future is either going to be better or worse than the present, and then if you think you have some control over that, why don't you try to make it better? Like, do whatever you can.
Yeah, it's like play the pragmatist. Be like, well, okay, well, I don't necessarily believe in God, but if I act as if God exists and I act as if other people should be treated very well, will my life
Hmm.
improve? And the answer tends to be yes. The
Yeah,
answer tends to be if I treat other people better, will my life be better? Yes, 110%,
if you're being a
a million
nihilist,
percent.
it's you're just gay, honestly.
Just
You're
cringe.
just an idiot.
It's like, oh,
I'm
really?
sorry.
You're a
You're just
nihilist?
cringe.
Why don't you commit uh, sewer slide? Why don't you slide down a sewer if you're a nihilist?
Yeah,
Because you
you
have
can say that.
value. You shouldn't do
The
that.
Dode meme is just like, oh, you're a nihilist? Guess you won't mind if I kill you then. It's like,
It's like, but you will, because you realize your
yeah.
inherent value. Even be like, no one want like, unless you're very depressed, go seek help because you do have value.
Hmm.
But if you think you don't have
100%.
value and you're not willing to die for that, well, chances are there you do have value. You realize it's not worth to just give up your life willy nilly. So if you don't have value, go seek value. It's somewhere. I don't care how horrible and bad your life has been. I don't care all these horrible things that have happened to you or maybe you've done to other people. You have value. You
Hmm.
have potential. The future is as open as you choose it to be, right? And narrow your gaze so that you can go down the path in which you choose, not the path which is chosen for you. Pick a narrow gate and enter with all your might. And I think
Love it.
that's all I can say about getting out of a rut is rethink everything, reprioritize anything, keep the good and remove the bad. And that's all I have to say about that.
That's great. Just want to say stagnancy is death, but you can be reborn. So you're in a rut, you will burst out of that rut like a phoenix from the ashes. We know you have what it takes.
Mm, you do.
There is no such thing as bad weather, only different kinds of good weather. John Ruskin.